Cyber Studies. If this is your first time here, my name is Giovanni. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today is episode 1 of our Python playlist. We're going to dig into some of these data types and printing to the screen. So without further ado, let's get in there. Alright, so we are going to start our Python playlist. So as mentioned in the intro, tonight we're going to break into the data types and how to print to the terminal, to the screen. So we're going to go ahead and launch up IDLE, or IDLE. And I'm going this route, even though I showed you how to do the installation for PyCharm in episode 0, this is the IDE that comes out of the box. So we're going to keep this nice and simple and user-friendly. And what I like to do is I'll open up the shell itself, the main program, and then I'll do a script on top of it. So I went ahead and prepared like a little demo for YouTube. Again, nothing too crazy, just to talk about data types. So the portion on the top here, this is the script. This is the Python document. And then the thing on the bottom, this is what you see as a user if you're interacting. So if you're in terminal, if you're in CMD, any sort of shell, this is what you're gonna see on the bottom. So starting from the top here, these are a list of our data types. So integer, as you may have guessed, this is any whole number used, positive or negative. So as long as it doesn't have any sort of decimal, it is considered an integer. Now going into floats, you may have guessed, but floats are anything that's positive and negative with a decimal. So .0, any of these are considered floats. Now, you saw on the first one, it's 0.0. While it is still considered technically a whole number, it is a float, and it is because of that decimal point. Moving on to the next one is str, or strings. This one is kind of, it's interesting because as long as it has quotes on it, it could be anything inside there. So if you were to say, any sort of characters, hello, that is considered a string. If you were to say a single quote, this big crazy number, that is also considered a string because it is wrapped in those quotes. Now, if I wanted to say something like, please subscribe, and you wanted to add some, wacky special characters in there, as long as you have the first and last quote as the single or double, but they're the same, that's all it really matters. You'll see here that I have the front of it with a single quote, with the back of it as its correspondent, and then the actual thing I want to show as a quotation, they match. So if you wanted to quote a quote, or if you wanted to print a quotation, this is how you would do it. As long as they're in those pairs, you're doing good. Moving on to Booleans, very simple, true or false. This is kind of useful if you wanted to do things like loops or have any sort of value and parameters to equal something. By doing a true or a false, it allows you to use that moving forward. So it's anything that's true or false. And then the last one I wanted to get into tonight is complex. Which you may have guessed it. This is a complex number. Think of it kind of like in like algebra, these the imaginary numbers, right? So you have these crazy numbers, and then you have your associated, alphanumeric. This is used in arithmetic. I don't use it that often, but if you're doing data science, machine learning, what have you, I imagine you're gonna bump into this. I also went through and listed off a handful of other types of data types, but we're gonna get into more of those in later videos. They're like intermediate to advanced concepts, and this is the first episode, right? So then the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned, was the print function, or the how we would basically take anything in our script, and then we're gonna put it down on the shell for the user to see. So I'm going to clean this up real quick, and then from there I'm going to do some printing to that terminal or to the shell. So how we would do that is print, and you're going to wrap it in these parentheses. Now typically you're going to do quotations unless you're dealing with things like numbers So we're gonna say, hello world or cliche. And then how I like to do it with idle, you just do Control S, and that's to save what's in your Python script, and then F5. F5 is going to poop it down to your shell. So you see here, we have our print function, hello world, and then we wanted to do another one, for example, 4. Do there, Control S, and then F5, beep, you'll see it again, hello world, and then there's that 4. And you could do, if you wanted to, you could wrap it in quotes, but be mindful, because if you wanted to say the same thing and you wanted to print that down there, you will see that it's a 4. However, you've now manipulated the integer data type into a string. And I can show you that by using the type command. And so Control S and then F5, and it's showing that as a string down here at the bottom, as opposed to an integer. Whereas if I were to take those quotes off, Control S, F5, we're back to integer. So this is kind of a cool little way you can interact with some of these data types. And as we go into these further lessons, you can see how they're very useful and helpful to kind of understand what they are, so you know which ones to use and how to interact with them. All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. Next week, we're gonna dive into variables, user inputs, and some arithmetic, some math. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and leave some comments down below so we know what to do for the next videos. Till next time, thank you very much.